Good morning, everybody. This is really fun to scroll and see so many familiar names and faces. I've worked with a lot of you for years and sometimes decades. So I've been looking forward to this for a really long time. If you don't know me, I'm Hal Cato. I'm the CEO of Community Foundation of Middle Tennessee. I've been in this role officially, I say officially, just over a year and a half, although I feel like I've been preparing for this role for 30 years. Started my career in this sector in 1991, and I pulled together a handful of acquaintances and friends and people, honestly, I didn't even really know, to start, hands-on asphalt out of my living room. And I fell in love with the sector at that space, and have been on a bunch of boards. I led Oasis Center for 11 years and Thistle Farms for 7. So I know how hard this work is. I know what you experience every single day. I know what those midnight wake up panicky things feel like. I know how hard it is to find funding, to apply for funding, to find new revenue streams. I just saying all that because I get you and I understand. I'll be honest, when I was first approached about this job, I was scared of it. I have, like many of you, had relationships and partnerships with the Community Foundation for many years, but I can't honestly say that I ever really understood what it did until I got in here and realized, oh, okay, that's the difference between a private foundation and a public foundation. That's how the funding works. That's how donor advised funds are set up. That's how it works. And so I knew immediately that I wanted to make 3 or 4 big changes as it relates to our partnership with nonprofit organizations. Number one, I wanted to be extremely open. In the days of being a mysterious building where you don't really quite know what's going on or how decisions are made or how funding is awarded or what donors are looking for, what they're not looking for, those are over. We want to be open and an engaged part of this community and with you. We want to partner with donors in ways that we haven't been. It's when somebody sets up a fund here, they do so because they want to be part of the community. They want to know what's going on. They want to understand what innovative solutions are out there. And I define innovation as something that's both new and needed. So it's our job to share that with donors. I want to work with other foundation leaders to pool funding behind big new ideas. We meet once a month here and talk about all the great things happening. Most importantly, I just want to be an advocate for you. And Nicole and Adnan and we have an open door policy, and we really want to be in communication and in community with you. So that is my pledge, and I hope this is just the beginning of just a whole new dialogue and a whole new relationship. So let me jump into this, and I thought it might be helpful to just give you a little bit of background. When I got to Community Foundation, it was in a really, it had just experienced its first leadership transition in 31 years. We were coming out of multiple disasters and bombings and tornadoes and floods. We had had a really challenging investigation by News Channel 5 that I sat and watched, probably like many of you. And we were on the precipice of moving into a new building that had been in the works for years, way before I ever got here. But I knew that building was going to be an opportunity to position us in a way that we hadn't been before. The board wanted a strategic plan immediately. And I got in here and I realized, we're not quite ready yet. We need to do a strategic framework. And so we're going to talk about that in just a moment. But we also, I've been wanting to look at our grant making strategy for a year and a half since I got here, because I knew that there was a more impactful way that we could do it. And I'm so honored. I have an amazing team here at the Community Foundation that you're going to get to know better, and You probably have already worked with Nicole, but Adnan Karim, who's our new Vice President of Community Impact, is a native Nashvilleian, MNPS, K through 12. And he's moved back to Nashville after doing some really cool work nationally and internationally, and understands capacity building in the nonprofit sector in a way that I don't. And I'm looking forward to you getting to hear from him. And then Nicole Rose, who just has such a deep, deep affinity for this sector, and wakes up every single day and wondering, what can I do to make their job easier, and how can I help them better tell their story? So this is the team. This is the team that's got your back and that's going to be talking to you today. Let me tell you a little bit about our strategic framework. And I use framework because it precedes a strategic plan. Because if you're not really clear on where you want to go and what your mission is and how you work together, doing a plan is premature. We're anchoring this new strategic framework with just a new North Star, re-examining our mission, our purpose, our vision, and why we exist. I'm going to share that with you in just a moment. So, we started talking about it. So if we have a North Star, what about the other stars? So we're building this framework around 4 of them. Our East Star really is looking at our external priorities. Every single one of you has done strategic planning at some point, and you understand the whole goals, objectives, strategies, tactics, waterfall. That's what we are building right now. But then I think equally important, you have to look internally, and I call that our West Star. What are those values that we hold sacred for working with one another and for working with you guys? What are the processes we use to work, and how can we streamline and improve them? There's still a lot of things here that are way too manual, and so we're converting over to a new system. What are the practices we need to lean in on? What do we need to let go of that's no longer serving us? And what are those guiding principles that we'll work with? And then you put in the very center of that is the culture that we want to create. Because the culture in this building and amongst my team and our board, the ripple effect is tremendous, and you're going to feel it. If it's good and healthy, you're also going to know if it's not. So just, for years and years and years, our mission was to match generosity with need, which is a great tagline and a great bumper sticker, but it doesn't get to the why. And so our why, this is our new mission statement, is really about building a more thriving and inclusive community that today and for generations to come really speaks to what a community foundation is about. It's about perpetuity and how we establish funds today that will benefit the Nashville area for generations to come. And then I think this is really the most important part, honestly, is how we transform thoughtful generosity into positive change. It's not just generosity, it's thoughtful generosity. And our donors, we did a big survey late last year, and they told us, we want you to speak with us. We want to know what's happening. We want opportunities to learn together and with others, and to learn from the sector. So we'll be doing a lot more donor education and engagement going forward. Also, I'm a big values person, and if values are those things that keep us tethered to the work and remind us how we are supposed to show up every single day. And our staff went through a really, I think it was a transformative process here, where we articulated and interviewed and did a lot of appreciative inquiry and looking at who are we when we're at our best and when we're not at our best, and what are those values that we need to practice every single day. And you'll see them here: listen and learn, grounding the work in trust, showing up for each other in the community, and then finding the good and praising it. But values, if you don't have key actions that remind us how you live that out every single day, can just become a poster on a wall. And just so you know, we're going to share a PDF of this presentation later, so don't feel like you have to screenshot it or grab it, because we'll send a PDF out later, because I want you to study this, because I want you to hold us accountable for what we're saying right now as well. So these are our values. And then we've created an internal North Star. This is not our external vision statement. This is our North Star. In 5 years, the question was, how do we want people to describe the community foundation? How do we want our nonprofit friends, our donors, other community partners? And these were the key words: trusted, valued, connector, solution seeker, and my favorite, servant leader. We are here to serve you. We are not here to be able to be a charitable bank. We're here to be an active and engaged community partner. And I know these are a lot of new words for this foundation. And then I think this may be one of the most important breakthroughs of anything that we've done and built that will drive our work going forward. Most people, when you hear the word foundation, you think of one thing: grants. And for a private foundation, that is the one most important thing to do. When you've been established by one donor to do what that donor wants to do, it's very different from being a public charity. And so we started looking at what else other than financial capital can we get. You guys know the issues that we face. We can't be our way out of hunger, homelessness, housing, anything. There's not enough resources to do it. So on top of grant making, what are the other forms of capital that need to be leveraged to really create change? And these are the ones that we're really leaning in on. And I think it starts, number one, with just showing up and building trust, asking the question, what can we do together that none of us can do on our own? It's about focusing not just on problems, but on possibility, using an asset frame and not a deficit frame. And finally, and you guys, if you've been around long enough, you know what I mean when I'm saying this, well-funded efforts that start off with a clear outcome initiated from the top rarely succeed. I think it's why we've struggled with collective impact, because so often it's driven by a funder who puts a North Star out there and we all wind up behind it. Doesn't work. So the other things that we're looking is how we leverage our intellectual capital together, knowledge on issues, especially with groups who have a shared desire to get to the best solution, but they don't have a solution in mind yet. I think community well-being, as we've talked about, starts with the quality of relationships and how we leverage relationships to build networks, to build norms, and to build trust in spaces where it doesn't exist or where it's been damaged. And then lastly, I think it's the reputational capital. How can the community foundation use our name, use our assets as a kind of collateral for those leaders and those organizations in town whose formal credentials understate what they can accomplish? It's oftentimes endorsement through a grant, a fiscal sponsorship, or high-level partnerships with community foundation can be especially helpful to marginalized groups who have a hard time breaking through the noise. And I'm particularly proud of, for example, the work that Erica Burnett is doing with the Village right now around that. And then finally, obviously, how we leverage financial grants, not just the grants that we have, but also the grants that we can pool together with other donors and other foundations. So that's a peek under the hood at the work we've been doing. We will be sharing and publishing our new strategic plan and framework at the end of July in conjunction with the release of a new website. So you'll get to see all of our goals, objectives, and strategies that we have in mind for our key stakeholders. And I'm going to toss it over to Adnan now to let you tell you about the community impact grants. I'll be hanging around because the most important part of this time today is the Q&A, because I want to make sure that you get off this call and you feel like you got the information that you need to move forward. So thanks for being here, and Adnan, take it away.
Great. Thank you, Hal. Glad to be here. And I just want to say before I begin that I'm really humbled to be in this seat today, because as a native Nashvilleian, as Hal mentioned, I've been fortunate enough to work in the nonprofit space for over the last 15 years, both domestically all across the nation and internationally across a variety of issues, from education to organizing to peace and conflict, human rights education. And I'm glad to just be home. I'm glad to be back home and put my experience and skill sets in partnership with the community that raised me. And I can't think of any better way to be back home than be part of the sector and in many ways holding hands with all of you. And I'm a nonprofit person. I'm only 1 month into this side of the table, so I'm very much still operating with the nonprofit lens. So you've definitely got a support in me and an intimate knowledge into what that world is like in the work. So, you know, our goal is simple in our community impact grants program. We want to support and champion the organizations that really make people feel belonged, that they have a sense of connection, and that they're included. And particularly for those that are benefiting least from the way that our region is growing and not experiencing the prosperity that some are. And so we really want to champion those organizations. And in order to do that, we had to take a critical look in our grant making. And who we are as grant makers, and more than that, who we are as partners to the community and to our nonprofit partners. So the changes in our grant making come from a combination of taking feedback from a lot of you, taking and leaning into best practices across the nation around how is philanthropy doing good and how is it being done right. Really reflecting on our own collective experience within our community foundation team, where a lot of us have come from the nonprofit space, and most importantly, really leaning into being servants to the community and community needs. So we can go to the next slide, and this is where I'm excited to share some of our major changes. And so our first major change is really, it's grounded in trust. And you know, the move to making our grants from restricted to unrestricted is the commitment to the sector to say, you're the expert. I mean, we should really be following your lead, and, you know, why should we be dictating the way you use the funds? Because you're the ones that are the most proximate to those target demographics, to those people, the people that are closest to the problems. And we should be leaning on you to understand how to best use those money to really meet the need. And it's really grounded in that trust. And I think restricting the funds, you know, for me and in my own experience, is that it really undermines each organization's ability to make the best decisions that they believe they need to make to achieve their mission. And so that's one of our main changes there. The second and third change really comes from, and if you read Hal's memo and our letter that went out earlier when we announced our grants, is, you know, I'm sure it's a dilemma that I would venture to guess that a vast majority of you deal with, is the dilemma of going wide versus deep. And I think a lot of us can agree that, you know, how do we balance quality versus quantity, and the ability to go deep and really make significant change. And we made the decision to go deeper. The feedback was we need larger grants, deeper investments. And so, you know, the need for those transformational grants, and that's what we're moving from smaller grants of average to $5,000 to $6,000 to an average size of $20,000, and a deeper investment. And, you know, yes, in the past we've technically granted more, but they weren't transformational gifts on average. And the ability to make larger gifts, and this idea of deeper investments isn't just the financial, it's to those 4 outcomes that Hal was referring to. And leaning in deeper allows us as a foundation to go in deeper in partnership in that intellectual, social, reputational capital that he mentioned. And it really gives us the ability to go into that with all of you. And the fourth one is being intentional on who we're prioritizing. While all budget sizes are eligible to apply, for these grants to be transformational, we really want to put a preference on our small to mid-sized nonprofits that are in our region. So those are some of the large changes, and we can go to the next slide, is taking in a more focused approach on what are the areas that are really key for Middle Tennessee to be a thriving environment, a place where people feel belonged and feel connected to each other. Is, you know, we took stock into where most of our funds have historically gone and where donors have mostly invested, and the areas that are essential for Middle Tennesseans to thrive. And it allows us to go deeper into these areas, and those are in the areas of arts and the creative culture. They're in child and youth development and education, and they're in positive mental health and quality of life for everyone here. And so those are the main focus areas that we're going to be really narrowing our focus in this year. And I'll address some of the questions that come about that later on in the session. But I think, Hal, you went off mute. I think you wanted to add something here.
Yeah, the only thing I want to add is we're not going to get into the weeds on what each of these means. We do have 3 other sessions set up specifically to go deeper in these. So if you're not signed up for one of those and you want to like really dig into it, please do. But we're not going to have time on this call to to go deep on this.
We can go to the next slide. And I think this will be another change that you all may notice is how we're going to be categorizing the way in which we give out the awards. And so, I mean, this is pretty self-explanatory. If you know your operating budget, this is the award. If you're selected to get an award, this is the award you're going to be getting. It's in that bucket. So I just want to, and this is in the vein of being completely transparent of what you can expect. So there's in this application process, there's really no need to request a budget. It's if you know what operating budget size you fall in, that's the amount that you can expect to receive if you're chosen to receive grant from the foundation. And yeah, and just a quick overview of our timeline. The applications opened on the 3rd. They'll be closing on the 30th. We'll have about 2 months to review, and I'll go in a little bit more detail about what that review process looks like at a high level in a bit. And then by October, we'll have an announcement of who received the awards. And just wanted to touch on, in the announcement, you saw that there's additional grant opportunities. We saw other questions come in. And so you can expect these opportunities if they apply to your organization. Like if you've received Women's Fund funding before, the opportunity to apply directly for those funds will open up on the 1st, along with if you're an organization dealing with animal welfare, those opportunities will open up August 1st. And keep a lookout for other funding opportunities that can and may and will be added into those funding opportunities that fall outside of our community impact grants. So all that to say, there'll be 2 cycles, one for our community impact grants, and then those that are other funding priorities. And you can apply to both. So I'm going to share my screen just to quickly. Well, I guess I can't share my screen, Nicole. It says I can't.
You can now. Hal just needed to unshare.
Okay. Right. Okay. So I just wanted to go through, so when you land on our website, it'll take you to this landing page. And so for you to get more information and you want to revisit some of the information that we shared in a little bit more detail, make sure you go to this top corner on the top tabs and hit nonprofits. And you can also hit community impact grants, but I'm going to just hit nonprofit as an example. It reiterates a lot of the context of our changes here. And as you scroll down, you can hit community impact grants to get into our focus areas. Like Women's Fund, animal welfare grant opportunities, you can go and find that under additional grant opportunities and any other ones that come down the pipeline. And then you can also have a direct link to Giving Matters here. So I'll click on our community impact grants here. There's a navigation both on the side, but you can also navigate it as you scroll down here. And all the information that I've been sharing thus far is on here. And from the budget size to the directions on how to apply for a grant, the timelines. There's grant guidelines if you want to really get into specifics of understanding eligibility or not. You can go to the grant guidelines and dig into that. If there's other questions that may not be answered on today's call, you can definitely click on our frequently asked questions, and that's a living document. As we get more popular questions, that common questions, we'll continue to add them into it so that it's serving you all best. And where it says sample community impact grant application, I believe that's going to be an ability for you to view the full application without having to click through the live link. So if you are a development staff member and you want to look through the whole application and share with team members, with program staff, you can look at the PDF version of it and collect the information that you need and walk through it without having to actually click through the link. So that'll be live. And obviously links to join any of the further virtual sessions that we have. And ways to contact those of us that are part of the team at the very bottom. And I'll just use one example. If you want to learn more about arts and culture, you can click on that link and you can read about our funding priorities. A link to apply will be directly there as well with the FAQs and a link to the PDF version of the application. So there's multiple ways to get to the information that you'd want to get to. So I'll stop there now for where to navigate the website. And then we can go back to our slides. Time to answer some of our questions. So as you noticed when you registered for this session, there was an opportunity to give your questions, give your feedback, and we wanted to make sure that we were able to answer some of the questions. And we pull these questions because they were the most popular, most common questions that we've been receiving, and hopefully this answers some of the most pressing questions that many of you have asked us. And so I want to go through these, and Hal and or Nicole, please chime in if I'm missing a point here. But the first common thing was most of you are just generally curious. There's a mix of folks who just want to know more, people who are new to grant writing and new in the development space, or new to leading a nonprofit and just wanted to learn more. And I hope that a lot of the information today both allowed you to learn a little bit more, not only about our grant making and community impact grants, but also just who we are as a foundation and what's our driving values, our philosophy, and who we are in service to you and in the community. One of the most common questions was, how can our funds be used? And I went over it, but it's unrestricted. It's up to you. You all know what's best and how to use those funds. If it's for, you need a consultant, you have to invest more in a certain resource. If it goes towards staffing, whatever it is that you need to further drive your ability to achieve your mission, that is completely at your discretion. These are completely unrestricted funds that we'll be granting to those that receive granting from us. One of the other questions was, what will reporting look like? We want to make this process as easy as possible, not become a burdensome task. One thing for sure that we're not going to do, we're not going to be asking for quarterly reports, written reports. We want to just ask for a final report and just ask, how was the year? What was accomplished? What was successful? Where did you need to lean in and be flexible? What did you learn? And it's an opportunity for us to learn from you as well. How did we do in service to you? What more could we have been support for you, so that reporting isn't going to be a one-way transactional conversation, that the purpose of this move in the way that we're going to be operating as a foundation in community impact grants is transformational. And that should also be seen in the way that reporting looks like, that it's a two-way streak of, how are you doing? But also, how are we doing in support of you? How are applications scored and selected was a very popular question. And so from a process point of view, after applications are closed, we'll be collecting all the applications, and it's going to go through a review process of community foundation staff and committee reviews with the help of a rubric. We'll be leveraging a rubric to help score and kind of tally up the questions answered in the narrative and financials and the other questions that are asked in the application. But it's not just about a quantitative score. There's a lot more that we want to take into account. One thing that I want to share, that I'm excited to hopefully bring into the way we are strategic in our fundraising, in our fundraising. I'm still in a nonprofit brain here. So one way that we're thinking about funding, and I think a lot of you can relate to this, is that, we want to think about funding the ecosystem and not just one-off programs or organizations, but if we really want to make the arts and creative culture an inclusive place for everyone in Middle Tennessee, what's the ecosystem that drives the ability or inability for the arts to be an accessible space for Middle Tennesseans? And it's, are we just funding only direct services, or are we also funding in our portfolio folks that are doing advocacy and policy work, folks that are really doing structural organizing, folks that are doing stuff outside of the status quo and bringing in alternatives, and folks that are doing mass mobilization, all the different types of work that really involve social change to really happen? And it takes it takes a whole ecosystem for that to happen. And we have to take that into factor. So, you know, that's one of our decision-making factors of how diverse is our grantee partners in a specific focus area working. Like, what's the diversity of the type of work that's happening? The size of nonprofits, we have to make sure that we're not just funding 5 million and over, or we're not just funding only the small, but that there's a diverse size of nonprofits, and what's the makeup of the nonprofits, and the diverse size of the demographics that the nonprofits are serving. So there's a lot that's being factored into how we're selecting it. And I do want to share that and we're in the process of finalizing that rubric that I mentioned. And in the vein of trust and transparency that Hal mentioned, we want to share that. There's no reason for us to not share the rubric that applications are being scored against and how we're selecting it. We want to be transparent and honest, and once that's set, we want to share that, and that'll be something that everyone on this call can see. The question of this came up a lot of, I'm unsure which focus area to select, or is it, and you know, I might be straddling between two. What I'd say to that is, you know, to the vein of going deeper, choose and apply under the focus area, which you know you go the most deep and you make the largest investments and you spend the most time in. You know, if you're straddling in between, say, arts and mental health, or mental health and education, it's choose the area in which you're going to be making the deeper investment in. And these applications aren't being, you know, run through automated computer and vetting them. People are going to be looking at it. We'll be reviewing it, and we'll look at, you know, how things are being intersectioned, and where's the crossover, and we'll be paying mind to that where there's folks that are straddling between two intersections. Then there's the question of, I don't fit in any of these, and there's clearly that I don't fit in it. Let's say if you're an environmental organization and we don't have environment on it, we want to be honest. You know, the funds that we have to call for an open proposal, open application for some of these focus areas, the funding is just not that big as compared to the focus areas that we have outlined between arts and culture, youth development and education and mental health. And we'll be looking at folks that we've granted before, and really looking at an invitation. We'll be leaning on folks that really know the space well, and reaching out to folks within those sectors that, you know, if we've got funds in environmental organizations, we'll be reaching out to invite you to send in an LOI or a proposal, and it'll be an invitation only process for those smaller funds that we have. And you know, in the future, hopefully those funds grow, but for now, it's just not a large enough fund to waste a lot of folks' time, spending a lot of time submitting a full-length application if we're only going to be able to give out a few of grants. And so we'll be following that for those that fall outside of our focus areas. There's the question of how were these focus areas selected, and will there be others in the future? I think Hal and I both touched on it in a way, but these areas, you know, these are where field of interest endowed funds have been. I mean, these are where donors have invested in these broad areas, and that's where we have the funding and the ability to invest in organizations that are in these specific areas. We don't have what we would call on our end the purely unrestricted, where it's 100% our discretion and in partnership with the nonprofit community and community to dictate where those areas are. And our hope is in the future to grow that unrestricted funding so we can be a bit more responsive to the pressing needs. But right now, these are very specific field of interest endowed funds that these grants are coming from. And you know, Hal, I don't know if you want to chime in more on this, but I think it's important to note, you know, if you're reading financials and you're looking at the larger amount of money that's going out to the community, you might see numbers like $68 million worth of grants going out to Middle Tennessee. The vast majority of that, 95, 96, 97% of that are donor advised funds. There's a clear line of sight of where those are going. When we're talking about our community impact grant, we're only talking about 2 to 3 to 4% maximum of that pot. So we're not really talking about that. And I hope that dispels a little bit of a myth of like, wow, there's all this money. How come, where is it going? And just to kind of clearly lay out where our financials are split up and how these grants fall into the larger makeup of the assets and funds that we manage. I don't know if you want to add to that or not, or but hell.
We'll keep going. I'm
Okay.
sure there'll be more questions.
And then there's just the last question is, can I apply to other funding opportunities along with the community impact grant? Yes. You choose to apply to one of our community impact grants. You can apply to that, and the examples of the Women's Fund, I think there was questions that had come in. If you want to apply for a category under health, if the intersection is health, but you mostly serve women and girls, apply for the health category in our community impact grants. And then when the Women's Fund opportunity opens up, apply, and that if that fits what your organization does, and you're more than welcome to apply for both. And those were the most common questions, and I think Nicole might be lobbing some questions that may have come in our Q&A.
There are quite a few. Are you ready?
Oh.
Mr. Steve Kuhn wanted to say, ShareBuilt is a nonprofit serving nonprofits at no cost who address these causes, these focus areas. Do we fit? Can we apply as well?
I may need you to repeat the question. I didn't.
Okay. It's okay. Mr. Steve Kuhn from ShareBuilt says, ShareBuilt is a nonprofit serving nonprofits who are addressing these interest areas and causes. Where do we fit, and can we apply as well?
Yeah, it would not, for intermediary organizations that serve all nonprofits across the board, it probably will not fit in one of these impact area grants. We'll have to talk about other funding opportunities there in the future.
Yeah.
And then Allie shared from Second Harvest Food Bank. Is the CFMT open to awarding collaborative grant applications submitted from multiple nonprofit organizations?
Yes. I mean, it's still, the grant ranges are still there, but we're definitely open to partnerships.
I know the answer to this one. I guess I could have typed it, but I think it would be good to hear everybody hear it. Are agencies with operating budgets larger than $5 million eligible to apply?
Yes.
Yes. And then, is there a focus area for shelter and housing this year?
Not this year. It's definitely something that we know is a need, and we're looking at building up funds for the future that we can make investments in that area.
This one's a two-parter from Mark Campbell. It says, will there be in-person visits from Community Foundation as part of the award? Additionally, does Community Foundation want to have a volunteer component of being part of the communities you're funding?
100%. We would love to come see you. We are, this team is chomping at the bit to get out of this building and come see you in action. As a matter of fact, we're going to host our next Community Foundation board meeting at a nonprofit location, because I'm trying to get everybody from board chair on down out into the community.
And I'd add to that especially once we send out who's receiving the grants from us. For example, I'll use, if you're the cohort of grantee partners that have received funding from us within the arts and culture focus area, we want to start convening all of you together. I think there's a lot of potential in just sharing space together, and I'll speak for myself on this. There's always, when I was in the nonprofit space, the tendency of like competition and how do we bring folks in together and realize that if there is conflict, it's really not interpersonal. It's maybe there's a misunderstanding in our own theories of change and where we operate, and just being able to unpack where we fit in the ability to make arts and culture more thriving and inclusive, and what's our role in that Middle Tennessee, and just holding space together and learning from one another. We've, to Hal's point, we moved into this building, and we really want to make sure that we're leveraging this space as a place to convene and really bring people together so that we can really share best practices and lean in on one another and learn from one another. So that's one of the things I'm going to be really excited to help lead this year and years to come is really thinking about, to the point of what's our role beyond the grant. And I think that's one of the most important ones. And I don't want to be in this office all the time. I'd rather be out there.
All right, we have another question. You mentioned that we can apply to a community impact grant and another grant under the other funding opportunities. Can we apply to more than one community impact grant under the different focus areas?
No, we would advise you just to pick one where you feel like, as Adnan said, you're doing your deepest, most impactful work, or it is part of your North Star as an organization.
There's another that it says, from statewide organizations that serve multiple areas of Tennessee with an overall budget above 5 million, but a Middle Tennessee budget that is less than 5 million. Does that affect priority in application or funding?
No, does not.
I think I had one in the chat too, so give me 1 second. Oh, hi, Kathy. Kathy would like to know if CASA programs would be a good fit.
Sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, Kathy, I mean, you know, what I would suggest is get on the child and youth development call next week and listen to the conversation, and then you can be the judge. You'll know whether you feel like you've got a good application or not. But I would encourage you to lean in and listen more on that.
That's all the questions I had submitted. Oh, I got another. You got another. It is, we are an adult literacy program. We were advised to apply under the general impact grant application.
Nicole, I mean, I'm not sure what.
Yeah, Susan, if you wanted to come off mute. I'm not.
Yes.
So go ahead.
Hi.
Hi.
We were, I'm in Dixon County, and Pat Lawson came and spoke with us this week regarding this. And he said that with our focus that we could apply through the general impact grant application. I went to the website and I did not see that link or anything like that. So I'm just trying to clarify what we need to do, or if this is something that will maybe be available in a year or two.
Yeah, Susan, what I would recommend, let's have an offline conversation, get further clarification on that. We don't have just a general impact. They're under these three main buckets, but we also have separate Dixon County, small amount of Dixon County funding through the Dixon County affiliate. So yeah, let's talk offline, or if you want to reach back out, we can have that conversation.
Okay, I sure will. Thank you.
You bet.
One thing I wanted to add, you know, in case we there's no more questions or anything I just wanted to plug. We will be sending, and Nicole sent out, we sent out an email earlier today letting you all know that after this session is over, you all will receive a recording of this session along with a copy of the application. So, but you can also link to it on the website as well. And we'll also follow up with an email where I will happily take one-on-ones with folks. So there'll be an ability for folks to schedule a one-on-one with me. And I want to be clear that, I mean, it's not necessarily for the purpose of guiding you through the grant application process necessarily. A lot of it is, I just, you know, coming back home, I really want to build relationships with folks here in this space, and I want to learn more. I think one of the, you know, going back to our values, I think the best thing I can do in my role of really serving the nonprofit community here is leading with questions and not statements, and asking why, and continuously asking why, leaning in, understanding your needs, understanding the needs of the community, understanding, you know, the challenges and opportunities ahead of each nonprofit here in this space, and building a relationship. I really don't want this to be a transactional relationship. Those don't get anywhere. And being able to have that deep knowledge and being in community with all of you is going to be not only important to me, but important for the organization to really move forward in a transformative way. And who we are as a foundation. You know, one of my former board member that I used to work with posed this question to Hal and myself and a member of our board members is, you're a community foundation, but how are you foundational to community? And that statement has really stuck with me. And that's kind of been my internal memo to myself and the way we want to operate as a community impact team is, you know, and then to that extent, how are we foundational to all of you? And I think that comes with leaning in and learning from you. So there'll be a link in that email that gives folks an opportunity to set one-on-ones with me. It's going to be first come, first serve. And it'll be perpetual. As long as I'm here, those are going to be my quote unquote office hours for folks to be able to schedule one-on-ones. And we can, you know, explore opportunities, learn from each other and just get to know one another. So I'm really looking forward to that. And then we'll add in other information in that email as these virtual sessions wrap up. So I just wanted to make a plug for that as well.
Yeah, and I just want to, you know, as we start to wrap up, say thank you. Hey, Melissa, thank you for that quote. I mean, it was nice to see your face. You've been doing this work for a long, long time, and I appreciate your dedication and leadership in our community. Yeah, I hope this is the beginning of a new relationship with you guys. I hope that we've helped demystify the community foundation a little bit. More importantly, you know, I hope we get to see you soon and that we can be your best cheerleader, your best advocate. We can help you think through the ideas that you have. We can help you bring your peers together in ways that aren't happening now. And not only align Community Foundation about it, but our fund holders and other foundations who are looking to us to lead. Oftentimes a private foundation, like say Frisk Foundation or Joe, they represent a family. And by that, they follow the funding goals of that family or organization. We represent the community. So we stand at that nexus of nonprofits doing important work and this crazy quilt of funders who have funds here as small as 5 and 10,000 and all the way up to 9 figures, and how we leverage that for good. So that's who we are. That's what I'm committed to. And I guess we'll wrap it up if there are no other questions. I just thank you, Nicole. If we could just everybody wave at Nicole and say thank you for the work that she does. And we've got some fun stuff that's going to be coming down the queue this summer with Giving Matters that we'll be talking about in a future conversation. So we don't have any other questions. We'll let you go about your day and have a great weekend and let us know what else we can do to help you.